Coming up on Arirang News, the South Korean government has decided on a new round of relief payments for small businesses hit by the pandemic, as a survey shows more than half of them are looking at shutting down. The money will be paid out next month. Data show South Korea's life expectancy has risen to 83.3 years, which is 2 years longer than the OECD average. The suicide rate, though already the highest, is climbing again. And as many feared, most of the members of the South Korean Navy's Cheonghae Unit on a mission in waters near Africa have contracted the coronavirus. They'll be brought back to Korea in the coming hours on board special transport planes. It's 5 p.m. here in Seoul. Thank you for joining us on Arirang News. I'm Devin Whiting. The past year and a half has been devastating for small businesses in South Korea, especially restaurants and hospitality. In the fourth wave of the pandemic, more than half are now thinking of closing up shop for good. To help them, the government has decided on another round of relief payments. These the biggest yet, and they'll be dispersed next month. Kim Sung-min reports.
Stricter COVID-19 restrictions, including a gathering ban of more than 3 people, have crushed the confidence of many small business owners in South Korea and left them questioning the future.
If I close the business, I could at least save electric bill. Now I'm paying that bill and the rent. So losing customers at this point is like trampling the business owners.
In fact, many small business owners are considering shutting up shop. Almost 6 out of 10 businesses said they might do exactly that, either temporarily or for good. And 7 out of 10 small businesses in the capital area, where the highest distancing rules are applied, expect that their sales during July to August will plunge by 40%. This is particularly devastating as those 2 months usually account for almost 25% of their annual sales. Small businesses saw sales drop over 45% on-year during that period in 2020, but with the tightened rules, that's likely to get even worse this year. As a result, the government and the ruling Democratic Party have agreed to expand financial support to small business owners and will start distributing funds from August 17th. The decision was made on Monday during a meeting of government and ruling party officials. More than 1 million businesses will be eligible, and all are expected to get the financial support before the end of August. The leader of the ruling party's Hong Young-gil said in this round, the financial support could be increased up to some $26,000 per person, a bumper raise from the original $7,900. That'll make the support payments the biggest of their kind so far. Song also hinted at a potential expansion of the second supplementary budget, though those details have yet to be discussed. Kim Sung-min, Arirang News.
And the pandemic's impact on the labor market in South Korea has led to a record number of discouraged job seekers, meaning people who stopped looking for work because of a lack of what they see as suitable options. Statistics Korea says the number of discouraged job seekers in June came to 583,000. The number is up 46,000 on year and has been rising for the past 16 months. Almost 47% of them are in their 20s and 30s. Those 60 and older accounted for close to 29% of the total. New data show that life expectancy in South Korea has risen to 83.3 years. That's 2 years longer than the OECD average. At the same time, Korea still has the OECD's highest suicide rate, and after declining for a while, it's been rising again. Pei-Ji has more.
South Korean babies born in 2019 are expected to live over 83 years. This is according to Health Statistics 2021 released by the OECD, an analysis based on each member state's data in 2019. The data showed that the life expectancy of Koreans in 2019 stands at 83.3 years, about 2 years longer than the OECD average of 81 years. This is up more than 3 years compared to a decade ago, when life expectancy in the country was 80 years. The latest figure is just 1 year shorter than Japan's life expectancy of 84.2 years, which is the highest in the OECD. By gender, Korean men were expected to live 80.3 years, while women were expected to live over 86 years. As for health indicators, the country had the second lowest obesity rate in the OECD. 33.7% of the population aged 15 or older were overweight or obese. But this figure has been rising in the country for the past decade. And the percentage of South Koreans aged 15 or older who smoke every day has reached 16.4%, the same as the OECD average. South Korea had the highest suicide rate in the OECD. In 2018, 24.7 per 100,000 people in the country died by suicide, more than double the OECD average of 11. The rate had been declining since 2009, but the latest figure shows that it is increasing again. 배은지, 아리랑 뉴스.
Time now for an in-depth look at the market news this afternoon, and for that I'm joined on the line by Dr. Yang Jun-seok, professor of economics at the Catholic University of Korea. Professor Yang, thanks for making time today. Good to have you back on.
Happy to be here.
Well, stocks on Wall Street last Friday closed lower, and that ended a three-week winning streak. This is despite a rise in U.S. consumer spending. What's the story right now in the global markets as we start a new week?
Okay, well, as you mentioned, the three major indices in New York had a big drop on Friday. Dow went down by 0.86%, S&P by 0.75%, and NASDAQ went down by 0.8% just for Friday. And for the week, all three indices also recorded in the red. For the week, Dow went down by 0.52%, S&P down by 0.97%, and NASDAQ by 1.87%. This came in spite of, as you mentioned, strong retail sales and better than expected second quarter earning report. So at least outwardly, they should have been optimistic, but what turned it around? Well, first of all, fear of inflation. When the last inflation figures for the U.S. Was reported at 5.4%, when Janet Yellen reported that inflation may be higher and more prolonged than what the Fed originally said, and then Chairman Powell sort of reinforced that view. The fear of inflation seems to have risen again in the stock market. Also, the Consumer Sentiment Index was 80.8. It fell from 85.5 last month, and it came in lower than expected. And consumers are fearing inflation as well. The consumers' inflation expectation came out to be 0.84%. Why are consumers thinking that the inflation will be that high? Because they usually follow gasoline prices. If you look at the studies of how ordinary consumers form inflationary expectations, the biggest component is gasoline prices, and energy prices have risen very quickly in the last few months. Europe, it fell slightly earlier than the U.S., but it still fell for most of the week as well. FTSE started falling on the 13th, Tuesday. CAC and DAX started falling from the 14th, but they seem to be basically sharing the fear of U.S. inflation and also the spreading of coronavirus. The Delta variant seems to be affecting the market as well. For today, the European markets all started lower than last week. Asian markets, Nikkei and Shanghai, since last Wednesday, they've been on a downward trend. Hang Seng was on a slight but upward trend all last week, but today they all fell. Nikkei, Shanghai, and Hang Seng all lost somewhere between 0.02% to 1.6%.
And Korea, somewhere in the middle there today, stocks here down too quite a bit. Some big names in the tech sector. It seems to some degree the virus would also be weighing on investors here. Tell us about the domestic market.
Okay, well, for the Kospi, it rode a roller coaster last week, but it was on an upward trend. But today it fell by 1.02%. It ended today at 3,244.04. Individuals bought, but institution and foreigners sold. Kosdaq, it was up on an upward trend last week, except for Friday. It started falling on Friday. It fell today as well, though not as much as KOSPI. It fell by 0.21%, and it ended today at 1,049.83. Again, individuals bought, institutions and foreigners sold. The analysts are saying that there's three main reasons why it fell today. The first, like the New York market, the fear of inflation. Second, the ongoing distancing, acceleration of spread of the coronavirus, as well as the Delta variant. And then third, following the New York decline on Friday. So the decline in the New York market on Friday seems to be depressing the entire global market today.
Indeed. And going back to last week, we saw the Korean won gain back some strength against the U.S. dollar, coming down the exchange rate from around 11.50 to the dollar to around 11.40. Then today we're back up quite a bit, around 11.47, 11.48. What's happening with the exchange rate?
Okay, let's start with the theory first. The simple theory says that the changes in long-term changes in exchange rate depend on the difference of inflation rate between the U.S. and Korea. If you take the June U.S. inflation figures, that it was 5.4%. The core inflation was 4.5%. June Korean inflation was only 2.4%, and the core inflation was even less than that, 1.2 to 1.5%, depending on how you measure core inflation. So at least theoretically, in the long term, Korean won should be gaining strength. It should be appreciating against the U.S. dollar, but nothing is that simple. The current and future expected interest rates and the movement of stocks and bonds do affect rates, and the largest effect on won-dollar exchange rate is actually the investment, stock market investment, and capital flow. So in July, we had a rough trend of depreciation, rising 1 per dollar for the won. That's attributed mostly to foreigners withdrawing from the Korean market in recent weeks, and that is in anticipation of U.S. Interest rate increase, as well as the possible tantrum that may come from beginning of taper that's expected sometime late this year. While the simple theory does tell us that Korean won should be appreciating because of the capital outflow, because of the stock market withdrawal by foreigners, it seems to be actually going the opposite way. And for the next couple of weeks, I really don't see any reason for that to change. But once the BOK starts seriously considering raising the interest rate, reportedly that's going to happen in August, we may see some changes in the pattern.
All right, we'll be keeping a close eye on that. And this week we'll get some data on Korea's producer prices for June, which of course would be an indicator of consumer inflation down the road. Producer prices have of course been rising all year. That and what else is on your radar this week, Professor?
Okay, well, for Korean statistics, the big one is going to be the national balance sheet that's going to be announced on Thursday. That'll show Korea's total assets and liabilities for the nation as a whole. For foreign statistics, on Wednesday and Thursday, we'll see some U.S. housing starts and housing sales. That's doubly important because it'll show how strong the U.S. recovery is, but also how much asset price increases are taking place in the housing market, like in Korea as well. And there has been some concerns that U.S. housing prices are going up too rapidly. And then on Thursday, the European Central Bank is having a policy meeting, and they should have some statement on their monetary policy for the near future.
Yeah, housing prices will be an interesting one. Median home prices in the U.S. up almost 25% over the past year, so look forward to that. All right, Professor.
Andy, okay.
Go ahead.
And the housing prices are reportedly higher than it was before the global financial crisis, before the mortgage-backed securities problems that the U.S. had. So it's a lot of people are very nervous about the U.S. housing market, and we'll have to see whether it's reaching even higher levels, which may signal danger for a lot of people.
Yeah, there's a lot of talk out there about 2006, or as if that's where we are today. We'll have to wait and see, though. Time will tell. Professor, thanks as always for sharing your insights with us today. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Test results show that, as feared, most of the members of the South Korean Navy's Cheonghae Unit operating in waters near Africa have been infected with the coronavirus. At almost 250 cases, this is the biggest outbreak within a single unit of the South Korean military so far. None of these personnel had been vaccinated before they were sent on their mission. Kim Ji-yeon reports.
South Korea's Joint Chiefs of Staff said on Monday that a total of 247 people out of the 301 members of the Navy's Cheonghae Unit have tested positive for the virus, meaning more than 82% of the unit have been infected so far. 50 of them have tested negative, while the results of 4 members could not be confirmed. So far, 16 have been hospitalized. 1 needs intensive care. The rest are suffering from mild symptoms, such as dizziness. The rest of the infected personnel are isolated within their 4,400-ton destroyer, Munmu the Great. All of the 301 members are expected to return to Korea late Tuesday on the military's 2 multi-role transport and tanker aircraft. The aircraft arrived in the area on Monday afternoon Korea time. They are carrying some 200 vaccinated personnel from the Navy, Air Force, and medical staff to aid the unit's return.
The military's MRTT aircraft have arrived at the site. While maintaining virus prevention measures, the military is preparing for the prompt return of the 34th batch of the Cheonghae Unit with close cooperation with related countries.
Seoul's Defense Ministry said it's currently securing military sites and consulting with South Korean health authorities to arrange quarantine facilities. In response to criticisms for not vaccinating the members of the Cheonghae Unit in advance, the ministry said there were limitations since the vaccines that Korea is using require separate agreements when shipped abroad, and that there would have been limitations in monitoring any side effects like anaphylaxis on board the vessel operating overseas. Kim Ji-yeon, Arirang News.
And South Korea on Monday reported 1,252 new cases of the coronavirus. That's the highest number yet recorded on a Monday, which is when cases are usually lower than they are later in the week. The Delta variant makes up a growing proportion of the variant cases being found, and the virus is spreading faster than before outside the greater Seoul area. Kim Yeon-sung reports.
Delta variant cases are driving up daily infections in South Korea.
Among the nation's confirmed cases, 47.1% have been found to be major variant cases, up 10.2 percentage points from last week. The detection rate for the Delta strain has increased 10.6% and is now at 33.9%.
Health authorities have confirmed that they have found at least 3 Delta cases from the cluster infection that broke out at an entertainment facility in Gyeongsangnam-do Gyeongsangnam-do Province. This cluster started less than 2 weeks ago, but has already led to around 170 linked infections. Health authorities now suspect that the cluster outbreak at a pub in Changwon, Gyeongsangnam-do Province might have also been sparked by the Delta variant. But the rise in cases is not limited to Gyeongsangnam-do Province.
In the Seoul metropolitan area, the number of cases per day increased from 799 to 990. In areas outside the capital region, the daily average jumped from 193 to 358.
In other words, over the past week, regions outside the capital area have been seeing a similar increase in daily average infections to those inside the greater Seoul area. And as people travel to popular destinations for the summer holiday season, the risk of the virus spreading increases. Regions outside the capital accounted for almost 33% of local infections on Monday. This comes as South Korea on Monday reported 1,252 new daily infections, reporting over 1,000 cases for the 13th straight day. This is the most cases logged on a Sunday, a day when fewer tests are done compared to weekdays. Kim Hyun-sung, Arirang News.
And from today, the ban on gatherings of 5 or more people has been expanded to cover the whole of South Korea. It had previously only applied to the capital region. Lee Kyung-eun has the details.
South Korea generally allows local governments to independently decide their distancing levels based on their respective COVID-19 situation. But with the fourth wave now spreading nationwide, authorities have decided to expand the ban on gatherings of 5 or more people to the whole of the country. Up until now, it had only been applied to the capital region as it is issued under distancing level 3 or 4 in the country's new 4-tier system. But for the next 2 weeks, it's being applied regardless of individual regions' distancing levels as authorities try to contain rising cases.
We discussed with local governments over the unilateral application of the rule amid increased cross-border travel during the summer vacation, and they agreed to apply the common rule.
The measure will last until August 1st, but unlike the capital area, which limits gatherings up to only 2 after 6 p.m., other regions will stick to the 5-person ban throughout the evening and night. And they will also allow exceptions to this rule, including gatherings with immediate family members. Also, a baby's first birthday party where up to 16 people are allowed. And a formal meeting of families ahead of a couple's marriage where 8 people will be allowed. Plus, vaccinated people will be excluded from the head count should the local government allow it. Separate from this rule, the 2 most popular summer destinations have raised their distancing levels. Jeju-do Island raised theirs from level 2 to level 3, under which those exceptions to the gathering rules will not be applied. And the Gyeongsangnam City in Gyeongsangnam-do Province raised theirs to the highest level 4, which is currently in place for the greater Seoul area. Lee Kyung-eun, Arirang News.
And as for the vaccine campaign, South Korea today started administering vaccines to its high school seniors and their teachers ahead of the annual college entrance exam, which takes place in November. Around 650,000 people are eligible, and more than 95% of them have signed up. This will be the first group of South Korean teens to be inoculated. Our Kim Do-yeon was on site to hear from the students themselves.
High school seniors and teachers are next up for Pfizer's COVID-19 vaccine. Health authorities have decided to inoculate these roughly 650,000 people ahead of other groups as a make-or-break moment awaits these students.
The inoculation of these students comes just in time as there are only 4 months left until the college entrance exam. This is the second exam under the pandemic, but vaccines will ease the safety concerns of the test takers this time around.
More than 95% of those eligible have signed up to get the shot, which is not compulsory to take the test. This center in Nowon-gu district will inoculate 17 schools in the district by inviting 2 schools per day. High school seniors and teachers across the country will all get the first doses by July 30th.
This is a good opportunity as COVID-19 restricted us from going to the cram schools, but because the government let us get the vaccines first, I can go and study harder.
As we are vaccinated, we can start going to study cafes and libraries more freely and with less concerns. I think I'll study harder.
We were limited in our ability to study with friends, but now we can ask each other questions and study in a more comfortable setting.
As we are shooting for the full opening of schools in the second semester, for a safer learning environment, I thought not only just the high school seniors, but also all the teachers should get the vaccines.
Next up for reservations are 50 to 54-year-olds who can start to make their reservations from 8 p.m. on Monday, taking turns by their age until July 24th. They will be receiving Moderna's vaccine. As for the country's inoculation status, more than 31% of the population received at least the first dose of the vaccine, while nearly 13% are fully vaccinated. Kim Do-yeon, Arirang News.
And turning to Major League Baseball, the Toronto Blue Jays South Korean pitcher Ryu Hyun-jin turned in an impressive 7-inning shutout on Sunday to help his team beat the visiting Texas Rangers 5-0. Ryu allowed 3 hits and a walk while striking out 4. This means Toronto won the first game of a doubleheader with the Rangers, opening the second half of the MLB season. Due to the pandemic, there are only 7 innings in a game in doubleheaders. And that brings us to the end of this newscast. Thank you for watching. More live news coming your way at 7 p.m. Korea time.